when that switch flipped was when I started to bet on myself,
Mm.
right? I didn't have to go rely on a book. I learned to just trust my gut and that I could figure it out.
Mm.
And that was such a huge mindset shift for me of, oh, I don't have to find this information in some book or some right answer in a book. I just have to trust myself that I can figure it out. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find the resources or find the people to help me figure it out.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, actually tonight, this evening, we are out in Nashville, Tennessee. Just got in with some of the team. Actually, the entire team's going to be flying in a little bit later tonight. And I'm out here for the STR Wealth Conference, 3rd annual, coming out here with one of my good friends. I got my man, Mike Sjogren. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
Been looking forward to this one for a long time.
We've been trying to make it happen for quite some time. It's funny because you first came on my old podcast, The Multifamily Takeoff, a couple years back, 3 years back. And that was the first time we had a conversation. I was so inspired. I ended up joining your mastermind. And then I came on your podcast about a year and a half ago. We've linked up a few times now, twice in Nashville. This is the 3rd time out here, and then Miami. And we became good friends since, man. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, dude. It was super cool. On that first podcast we did, I remember it was like clear as day, dude. I was talking about the boutique hotels, and I just saw this light bulb go off in you, and I was like, this dude's gonna take it and run with it. And fast forward, man, look at all the sick stuff that you've been able to do. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, likewise, man. And all the hotels you've been taking down is really cool to see as well. And you're on the East Coast, and so we're out on the West Coast, but it's always cool every time we get to link up. So, dude, I want to ask you, man, so 3rd time throwing an event out here. This is probably like one of the favorite real estate conferences I've been to. I mean, third year in a row coming, get to do a hotel panel with you tomorrow, which is going to be pretty super cool. What is it like throwing or hosting a live event? I've never done it before.
It's pretty amazing, dude. And it's funny, as I was prepping for some of my talks this week, I was going back and I found some of my old vision boards that I had made. And I found one that I had made 5 years ago after I went to Grant Cardone's 10X conference. And this was back when, I don't know, maybe I had like 10 properties. I didn't have any coaching programs. I wasn't doing events or anything. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to be on that stage one day. And I photoshopped a picture of me on Grant Cardone's stage. And now like we're hosting like one of the, if not the biggest event in the industry. And it's pretty surreal, man. It's really cool.
Yeah. You got Damon John from Shark Tank speaking. You got Pace Morby, over 2,000 attendees, which is going to be awesome. And I think also what makes the event cool is just downtown Nashville. There's just so much to do. So, after the conference, I always say these real estate conferences for me, yes, you pick up some nuggets from the speakers, but for me, the real value is the networking. You make a couple really good connections and it could change your life. So, from a networking standpoint, everyone goes out, all the bars here, rooftop, and a bunch of cool stuff, country music, and it's a fun vibe for everyone.
I think so I've got an amazing Bill Faith's my business partner on this, amazing business partner. And the vision we had from the beginning was we wanted to do something different that was fun, super educational, and just brought the industry together, and that it wasn't a pitch fest. So like this conference, none of these speakers are pitching anything from the stage. It's just pure value the whole time. And like you said, some of the most fun parts for me are just like walking around and meeting everybody and hearing their stories. And then like the last few years, like they come back and I'm like, oh yeah, like we talked last year. And they're like, yeah, I had this many properties. Now I got this many and I'm doing this and that. And like you said, the networking is incredible. And then everybody goes out and hits all the honky tonks and does more networking. And it really feels like it sounds cheesy, but it feels like a homecoming. Like when I come here and I see you and a lot of my friends that I've met over the years, it's like, this is one of the few times a year that like we all get together and it's just friggin' awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, man, shout out to Krysten. I know she's not able to make this one, but you guys are expecting soon. So congrats. And
yeah,
that's exciting. It's number 3?
Number 2. Okay. Yeah. We had a close call last week. She ended up getting admitted to the hospital.
We were going to hop on a call. You're like, hey bro, pump the brakes.
Yeah. We ended up in the hospital. She is 9 months pregnant right now. So it's a little crazy, but yeah, we're super excited. Got a baby girl coming and yeah, man, it's huge blessing. Really excited.
Dude, so I want to jump back early on in your story because your story is definitely unique, and I think a lot of the listeners could resonate with it. And your story is similar to mine in the sense that, like, dude, you were a W-2 employee as a CPA, correct?
Yeah.
And you got into real estate investing through some personal family stuff, and you just kind of had that aha moment and that wake up call, which is kind of what I had as well. But I'd love to go back and just hear your story one more time. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I was a CPA for 10 years. You know, I did what they told me to do, right? I went to school, I got good grades, got a good job, got my CPA license, got my MBA, all this stuff. And, you know, things were pretty good. I had a decent salary, house in the suburbs, couple cars, things were fine. And then when my son was born, he was born with a very rare lung disease called interstitial lung disease. And so, like, you know, if you're a parent, imagine waking up one morning. It was actually the day for his newborn photo shoots. He was like a few weeks old, and we had all of his outfits laid out. And I walk into his room, and his face is blue, his lips are blue, and I can't wake him up. And ended up calling an ambulance. I threw him and my wife in the car, and I'm going 90 miles an hour down the highway to like rendezvous with an ambulance because I couldn't wake my kid up. And it started this crazy 2-year journey where, you know, they were doing all these tests trying to figure out what was going on with them. And at a certain point, you know, we'd been in the hospital 3 weeks straight for one of these stints. And I had run out of vacation time. I had run out of sick time. I had all these hospital bills piling up, and I had to leave my wife and my son in the hospital. And I was crushed, man. I just felt like such a failure as a man and a husband and a father. And I was so pissed at myself for putting my family in that situation. And I told my wife that day when I left them, I said, listen, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find a way to build us a business that gives us the income we want without ever trading time for money again. And I knew real estate was going to be the vehicle. I thought it was going to be multifamily. And I had been working with some mentors and things. And it was like a kick in the ass to just be like, all right, dude, time to commit and go all in. And shortly after, I was in a mastermind. I met a guy that was doing short-term rentals. And he was telling me that he was making anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a month on properties that he didn't even own. And this is back in like 2016. And he was doing rental arbitrage, which is very well known now. But back then, not too many people were doing it. And I didn't even know if it was legal. I was like, this sounds kind of shady. But the concept made sense. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a piece of real estate, and instead of renting it by the year, I'm going to rent by the night and furnish it so I can charge a premium. I'm like, this makes sense. So I told my wife, I was like, this is going to be our ticket. So we went all in, took a loan out of my 401k, opened up a 0% interest credit card, bought a little 2-bedroom condo up in the mountains in New Hampshire, fixed it up myself, launched it. And just like this dude said, you know, we were netting about $1,500 a month. And I was like, this is amazing, but I can't live off $1,500 a month. So how do I scale this? And I'm financially completely tapped at that point. And so I started to think about it, you know, from a multifamily standpoint. I'm like, well, why can't I just partner with investors that have, you know, single families or small multis and just run this play for them? I'll do all the work. I'll build the furniture. I'll take care of everything, all the guest communications, and I'll just take a little piece because there's so much more spread on these short-term rentals. And, you know, it took me a long time to land my first, you know, co-host deal, which is what we call it these days. But eventually it just started snowballing very, very quickly. And before I knew it, you know, we had 15 properties in 5 different states. And I was able to leave my job, retire my wife, retire my mom, and then we were off to the races.
Dude, I love that story, man. It's because I did the same thing. I cashed out my 401k, and at the time, everyone told me not to do it. They said it was
crazy.
Too risky.
What are you doing?
Friends, even my parents, they were like, dude, what are you doing? That's crazy. It's too risky. Coworkers. And, you know, it's the first real estate deal. It's like, well, you read all the books, you listen to the podcast, and, you know, until you really do it, it's like, it's still hypothetical. You don't know if it's really going to work. But I'm so glad I didn't listen to anyone. Did you have a lot of folks tell you as well, like, hey, this is too crazy?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate also that at the time I was in a mastermind and I was surrounded by people that were supporting and encouraging me and challenging me. And it was funny, the guy that was running it, really my first like true mentor, I was telling him for like months, I'm like, I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to do this thing. And then finally he was like, dude, I don't want to hear you talk about this again until you have some more deals. Like just shut up and get some deals. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to commit to getting X number of deals by the end of the year. And if I don't, I'm going to eat dog shit on camera and I'm going to sell my motorcycle. And I got up in front of the whole mastermind at one of these live events and I committed to it like on camera. So I was like, okay, cool. Now I have this extra layer of accountability, which was cute. But at the end of the day, like the only thing I was thinking about was my kid in the hospital and I couldn't be there. Like that was enough fire for me. And I think the challenging thing for most people is you may not have that crazy circumstance. So you got to create that fire for yourself, right? It has to become a must and not just I want. Everybody says, I want to be financially free. I want to quit my job. I want to do this. Nobody cares what you want. What will you do? And are you going to put in the work to get it done until you get it done?
Yeah.
It's not going to, I don't know, it might take you a month, it might take you a year, it might take you 5 years. Are you willing to stick it out? Is your vision big enough and is your why strong enough?
It's so good, man. And I think to take it a step further, when you actually cash out the 401k, it's like you're going all in. You're committing. You're committing to this next thing. And so, from like a mindset perspective, mentally, you're like, hey, like I'm not just dabbling. I'm not just stepping my feet in the water. Like I'm going all in, and I'm going to figure this out. And I think life rewards those who go all in. They don't reward the people that are just kind of testing things out, 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of thing. So I think there's something to that as well.
As I look back, one of the biggest challenges that I had was I was always a good student. I got good grades. Like I knew how to study. I knew how to memorize crap.
Yeah, you don't become a CPA without getting good grades, right?
So I feel like that hurt me as an entrepreneur because I was studying all this material, trying to find what is the perfect right answer to do this. The real world doesn't work that way. So at a certain point, you just got to take that leap of faith and just go and be okay with making mistakes, learning from them, and then taking more action. Like that for me was such a huge, huge internal hurdle to overcome because no book, no mastermind, no anything is going to give you the exact answer. Like at a certain point, you gather all the information, you get all the support, but you got to take the leap.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think you see a lot of these folks at, especially these conferences, they come and they digest all these books and they go to these meetups and they just like educate and listen to podcasts and for podcasts. And it's like, yeah, it's great. You need to educate yourself, but at a certain point, you got to jump in and go, And so I remember looking back at my journey. I didn't do anything but educate for 9 months. And then once I started like taking action, there was parts where I stopped educating because I just didn't have time. I was like writing my own script, And then you get to the next level and you're like, okay, well, how do I get to the next level? Let me learn how to do that. And then you go back to the books a little bit,
Yep.
When you say you were in a mastermind, I think I got lucky because everyone told me it was too risky when I got started. And I was really lucky because I looking back now, I see the importance of being in these accountability groups, these mastermind groups, and being around the right people. Because, you go to 5 friends that have never owned any real estate or invested in real estate before. Yeah, they're going to tell you it's too risky, but it's like, dude, is that the right advice you should be taking? People that have never done it before. And so I got lucky in the sense that I wasn't plugged into all these support groups. I didn't even know what a mastermind was back then. And I got lucky that I just didn't listen to all the folks that were telling me not to do it. Otherwise I'd still be working airplanes right now.
100%, dude.
Yeah. So what was the point for you? Like at what point did you realize like, okay, I can actually do this thing and I'm going to make this work? Because you don't know until you do it, right? And then you do a deal, make some mistakes, you get a little confidence, then you do the next thing. But at what point did you have the confidence to be like, this is actually going to be a big thing?
So it's interesting, right? So I got we bought that first one, and then I started prospecting for co-host clients, right? I was a CPA. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to pitch. I didn't know how to do any of that. And so I was just doing insane amounts of outbound through Zillow and Craigslist and anywhere else that people had listings. And then I started hosting a local meetup and just educating people about it. And I was just doing a lot of different things just to try and generate leads. And I feel like it finally clicked when I used to rent like a desk at, it was basically a WeWork. It was at a Staples, but I forgot what they called it, but it was like a WeWork at a Staples. And there was this young kid who had an office there. He was in financial services. And I used to think, this dude's a baller. Like he's got an office in this place, right? And one day he came out. It was just the 2 of us in there. It was late. We were working really late. And he's like, what's your story, man? He's like, I see you in here working all the time. Like, what's your deal? Because I would go there after work and I would just work late all the time. And I told him what I was up to. And he was like, oh, that's interesting. I just bought a duplex and I was actually talking to somebody else that was going to Airbnb it for me. He's like, but I see you here grinding. He's like, I'd rather give you the shot if this is something that you do. And he did. And at that point, it was like that finally, after 9 months of like rejection, it was finally that proof of concept that, okay, I can close this deal. And within 2 months of that, I had 5. And it just started snowballing faster and faster. And the interesting thing was, I've always been a really good operator. So I got them results very, very quickly. Like that was just what I did. I was a CPA and I was an auditor. So I understood process and systems and all these things. And so I started getting them results quickly. And then they started referring other people to me. So the next thing I knew, I'm in 5 different states all of a sudden. And I'm like, oh boy, this is crazy. Like we're at that jump off point where I'm making as much here as I am at my full-time job. What's going to be the jump off point? And I think the other big psychological thing is when you actually make the decision to leave the safety net and go all in and go full time. That's a whole other massive mindset shift of, okay, I'm going to leave my comfort zone and I'm going to bet on myself that I can make this work.
How long was it from when you you did your first deal to where you quit the day job?
So I put my notice in. So we launched our first deal. It was like March of 2018.
Okay.
And I put my notice in October of 2019.
Wow.
So about a year and a half.
Yeah, 18 months exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was for me as well, 18
Yeah.
months. It's funny because, like, you know, looking back now, a lot of things that used to scare me back then, I'm like, doesn't even get me out of bed now, right? Because you go through all those like cycles of making a mistake, having to solve a problem, and you figure it out, and then you level up to the next level. And then it's like, okay, there's a whole nother level up here, and then you like zigzag and pivot, and you figure out how to break through, and there's a whole nother level. But, you know, back then I remember like just little things, I'd be like, holy cow, like how do I solve this? Like when I bought my first deal, I hired the wrong property manager. I thought it was a big deal, you know? And like looking back, I'm like, oh, it's like not a big deal at all. And then now, you know, where I'm at today, there's things that I'm looking up to. I'm like, how am I going to figure this out? You know? But it's kind of cool how that works, like just the reps. And I think that's why it's important just to jump in and start doing some deals, getting around the right people, know that you're going to make mistakes, but those mistakes are, you know, what you learn from.
I think that's also the other power of masterminds is, yes, you get a lot of education, but what it helped me do was normalize that this is a normal thing that anybody can do, right?
Yeah.
You know, E and I met in that first mastermind, and we got put in an accountability group. And at the time, I was the only one that had a job, and I was the only one that wasn't a millionaire at the time. And one of two things happens when you get put in a group like that. Either you retreat because you're so uncomfortable, or you just slowly start to level up. And it normalizes that, like, yeah, you can absolutely have this. These are just normal people just like me. And then it starts to create this belief in yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very underrated thing that people don't really think about. Because before this, my parents were super hardworking. My dad fixes elevators, and my mom worked at Macy's in retail. They taught me hard work, but they didn't know anything about running a business or real estate or anything else. It was just, okay, I'm the first one to go to college. You got this good corporate job. You've made it, right?
Yeah.
And that was like the pinnacle of success for them. You know what I mean? So when you get around other people that have gone a different path and you see it over and over and over again, it starts to normalize it in your brain.
Dude, I love what you said. You said anyone can do this. These are just everyday people that have figured it out. And I think I can totally resonate with that. Like all these podcast guests that I bring on, I'm realizing, even the ones that are like bigger names, I'm realizing I'm having these conversations with them before we start recording and then during the podcast. And my biggest realization is like, dude, these are just fucking normal people, man.
They put their pants on the same way. They deal with the same shit that all of us do.
And so each time I have a conversation with someone, I'm like, man, like they're not really like any smarter than anyone else. It's just they knew how to take action. They knew how to delegate. They knew how to put the right people in the right seats, and they knew how to ask for help when they needed help. And they weren't afraid to take calculated risk. And that's like the only difference. But I'm like, dude, these aren't people that are anything crazy. And so every time I interview these folks, I'm like, dude, it just gives me more and more confidence, you know?
And anytime I watch those interviews, right, and I analyze and I study those people's like the grants and, you know, people that have just like totally different level, it's just a self-belief that yes, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be problems. And the bigger you go, you just solve bigger problems. But when you asked me earlier, I think what the real answer is when that switch flipped was when I started to bet on myself, right? I didn't have to go rely on a book. I learned to just trust my gut and that I could figure it out. And that was such a huge mindset shift for me of, oh, I don't have to find this information in some book or some right answer in a book. I just have to trust myself that I can figure it out. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find the resources or find the people to help me figure it out.
Dude, that's so good, man. And right now, like I can feel the confidence coming from you. I mean, with all the growth that you've had, you know, I'm sure when you arise problems now, you're like, dude, I'll figure it out. I mean, what's the thought process now when you guys arise a new problem as a group?
There's just more commas and bigger dollar signs at the end of it, right? And the thing that I go back to, and a mentor of mine taught me this, and I'm actually going to talk about it this week, so it's fitting, but I'm always focused on recreating my self-image right? That Matthew McConaughey talk about, who's his hero? It's him in 10 years.
Mhm.
So when I ask myself, when I'm feeling stressed or something's going on, I ask myself, how would $100 million Mike handle this situation? Would he be stressing out, or what would he do? And the majority of the time it comes down to, I just need to find another A player. Like, I don't have to be the one to figure it out. So just doing that and pacing yourself ahead of, because we talked about it earlier, the stuff that used to freak us out, that's small potatoes now.
Mhm.
So if I future pace it of, in 10 years, this is going to be small potatoes. So why am I stressing this out? How would I think 10 years from now at that level?
Yeah.
It's just a different level of thinking.
It's so good, dude. I can resonate with that too. I think about it all the time, like things that, and this is not just things that I thought were scary 3-4 years ago, but just things that used to bother me. Everyday little things like problems would bother me 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm like, they don't bother me anymore. And then now I see other folks, if I'm around it, and they're like, they get bothered by this little thing. I'm like, hey, like, it's not a big deal. And you're gonna get 3 years from now, look back and be like, wow, that's not a big deal. It's just the growth and it's the reps. But I think most importantly is like you just gain the confidence to know, like, no matter how bad the situation is, like, we will always figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, when have we not figured it out? And that's
Exactly.
probably most folks in life. I mean, the only way you don't figure it out is when you give up. That's probably the only way to lose
100%,
in all reality.
100%.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I also think like there's a lot to like be said about, people like they call it the shiny object syndrome, to where they like to just chase that new shiny thing. And so, they might join a mastermind and be like, oh, this is my new thing. Do it for 2 months. They realize, oh, it's actually, I got to put in a little bit of work. This is not a turnkey thing. And it's a little bit harder than I thought. It's not exciting anymore. And then they move on to the next thing. But I say all this, and I think there's something to be said about the people that just commit to something long enough, even through the boring times, to, do it for 12 months, do it for 18 months straight, to get good at it. And you can get good at pretty much anything, and if you just stick to it for 12 months.
I got some amazing advice. Actually, I should connect you with him. He's out in Cali. Matty Aitchison, great dude.
Okay.
Great dude. He's done some hotel deals, a lot of commercial stuff. Really smart guy. And he gave me some advice years ago, because I was suffering from that, man. I had shiny object syndrome like crazy. I was like, all right, I went to these flipping events, and then I went to these multifamily events. I went to this thing and that thing. And he was like, dude, you're a smart guy. You just got to pick one thing and go all in, man. You're chasing too many rabbits. None of them are going to be easy. You just got to pick which one you want to stick with and stick with it long enough. And that's when I said, okay, I'm going to become the Airbnb guy, and I'm going to plant my flag, and I'm going to dominate. I'm going to master this thing, right? And like you said, it took a while. It took years for me to really, really dial it in. And then the next thing was, okay, now I'm going to master this hotel thing. And have I mastered it? No, like, I'm still learning along the way. I've got a lot more figured out than when we started a few years back.
Yeah.
But like, in this day and age, there's so many ways to make money, right? And somebody that listens to your show, you have so many amazing guests. They're like, oh, well, I should do this thing. And then, oh, well, I should do subject to, or, well, Grant's telling me to go do this 5% down thing, or I should go do this thing or this thing. They all work.
Yeah.
They all work. Just figure out which one you'd enjoy doing and go do that, and just put the blinders on and pick a couple people, ideally one or two, that you can listen to. Because if you start listening to too many people, it's not going to work, right? If I'm going to listen to Grant and then I'm going to listen to Dave Ramsey, I'm going to be stuck. I'm not going to move anywhere, because I'm getting two totally opposite directions. So just pick a lane.
I like that. And I think it's easy for people to get caught up on social media, and they see these folks that have been in the game for 30, 40 years, and they've built all this wealth, and they have multiple streams of income. And so they think, man, in order to get from point A to point B, I need all these streams of income. But in all reality, like, all those folks, I guarantee they didn't get to where they are with 15 streams of income. They got to where they are focused on one, maybe two things, and got really good at those one or two things. And then once they had more money than they knew what to do with, then they started diversifying into all these other things. And so I think the takeaway is, like, yes, you can do multiple things, but I think if you're going to bring on a second thing, it's got to wrap around your main thing. And if it doesn't wrap around and it doesn't like support it in any way, then I think it's the wrong move, because it's going to be counterproductive at that point.
And even then, man, even if you quote unquote vertically integrate them, in my experience, it's very challenging to push 2 rocks up a hill. Like, it just is. We've got multiple businesses at this point, but some of them grow way slower than others. And it's more of just like, okay, well, this ties in and it makes sense and whatever. There's just massive power and focus. And that's why, like, if you think of it, a lot of people listening to this will have some type of job or contract work or whatever. When I started this, I was working 60 hours a week as a CPA. I had a side hustle as an architectural photographer to make a few bucks to pay the bills. I had a kid in the hospital and I was starting this. Like, that's a lot of things to juggle. So it's like, okay, then I started to outsource the photography, hired this amazing person, gave her a big cut of whatever we were bringing in. I'm totally hands off. She runs everything soup to nuts and it's passive for me, right? Then it's like, okay, I'm building up the real estate. Cool. Now I start to build up a team. Okay, cool. Now all the ops are delegated to them. I don't need to be involved in that. And I can just focus on growing the portfolio. Okay, cool. I'm going to go start coaching. Cool. At the beginning, it's just me. Now I have a sales team and a marketing team and coaches and operations and all these things. So again, it frees me up. So bringing it back to the point that Maddie was giving me was focus on it so that you can master it and then delegate it. And then you can move on to the next thing. But don't try and grow 50 trees at once because they're never going to even sprout. You're just spread way too thin.
Yeah, I see a lot of people do that where they'll get into one thing and they'll see a little success and like, all right, now I'm going to go grow this other thing. And I'm like, no, keep going with that one thing, you know?
Hey guys, real quick, the only way this show grows, the only way we continue to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So if you could take 2 seconds or the click of the thumb to review on Apple or Spotify, it will mean the world to me. But more importantly, we'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs and more real estate investors and help them build wealth through this podcast. Now back to the show.
What was the biggest challenge for you? Like, I'm curious, to get from, where you were as a CPA to where you are today. Like, what was the biggest challenge you think along the way?
Changing my identity. No question. E can talk about this too when you get him on, but E helped me a lot with this because it's your self-image controls everything. Like how you see yourself, your identity controls your level of success more than anything else ever. Not technical skills, none of that. It's how you see yourself. And so my identity was tied so much to being a CPA that when I'd be out at a networking event, I'm looking to grow my real estate portfolio, grow my management business, do all these things. I'm introducing myself as a CPA. Why? Because it's in my subconscious. So I worked very, very hard to change how I saw myself. I reinvented myself as most people don't even know I'm CPA at this point. You know what I mean? So you have to change how you see yourself and your identity. Until you do that, it's going to be very hard for you to reach the level of success that you want to have. You'll always be held back by that.
Yeah, I can resonate with that because I think when I got into the space, I would introduce myself as I'm a full-time air traffic controller and I'm doing some real estate investing on the side.
Exactly.
And at some point, I was like, yeah, I'm a real estate investor. That's my new identity. And I think visualizing yourself and believing in yourself and capturing this new identity is huge. Also, what other people view you as, right? I think there's a perception that our old friends from back home or colleagues from back home are going to always view us as our old selves. And that might be true until you prove them otherwise. But, what about all these other folks you're going to be meeting tomorrow? How are you going to position yourselves when you meet them?
I cut a lot of them off, to be honest with you. And it's not that I don't love those people, but I needed to, at the beginning, it's hard enough for you to create that belief in yourself. You throw in some people that you care about that question your belief, it's an uphill battle. So I am ruthless with who I spend time with. I select my inner circle very, very closely, and I just block out noise. And I'll still see those people every once in a while, but I don't spend a lot of time with them, right? And then those are the same people that come back to you years later of like, dude, you're doing all this amazing stuff. How did you do it? And I'm like, well, I just stuck with it longer and I wanted it more. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like, for a listener out there right now that maybe has one or two folks in their circle that maybe aren't aligned with where they're going tomorrow and maybe not supporting this new chapter for them, do you feel like they need to cut them out?
I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least for a while. And like at the end of the day, your life is your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go back to that vision of me at 95 years old on the rocking chair on the porch, looking back on my life. I never want to have the regret that I didn't have the balls to go for it.
Yeah.
Or put blame on somebody else because I cared so much about what somebody else's opinion of who I should or shouldn't be. My life. I will never have that regret.
Mm-hmm.
I won't.
Yeah. That's so good. I had to remove a couple folks too. And now looking back, I'm like, I think I'm just such a different person now. Like that.
Dude, the conversation, you can barely have a conversation with a lot of them. Because I'm like,
Yes.
I don't want to talk about stuff from high school. Like I'm not that guy anymore. I don't know if you still are, but it's been a long time, or even college. Like, I'm not that dude.
Yeah. I think when you get into that like growth mentality, like you're so excited about the future and you're so excited about tomorrow and the growth, and it's like a constant thing for me. And so when I get around folks that they're always talking about the past, I'm like, fuck, dude, like it's cool to reminisce every now and then. But I'm just so much more excited about tomorrow than the past.
Dude, I did Patrick Bet-David's business planning workshop back in December.
Love PBD.
He's legit. I got to meet him last year. Such a stand-up dude. Amazing guy. But he said something that stuck with me. So, even if some of those people have had success in the past, he was talking about his family, and he said, your family will always love you to some degree. But he says, do they admire you? And he's like, when I look at my family, I don't want them to admire me from what I did 10 years ago. I want them to admire me for what I'm doing right now. And I never want to get complacent. Because this is a dude that just had a multi-9-figure exit. So he's like, I got to find levers to pull that keep pushing me. And so question to ask is, does my family love and admire me? And am I inspiring them? So yeah, man, like the past is great to look back and see how far you've come, but dude, there's so much more. Like, why would you settle? We only got one shot at this thing.
Only one shot.
Like, that's it.
Yeah. I think when you think of life in those terms, like, hey, one shot, and I know that tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
I think that, and I think when you live life that way, it makes a lot of these decisions easier to make. It's like, well, duh, let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly.
Another thing I do is whenever I'm proposed with a decision is I think about what is the worst possible outcome that could come from this? And am I okay with that worst possible outcome? If I'm okay with it and there's upside, I'm like, let's
go time.
Let's rip it. Yeah. And often I think that worst possible outcome probably will never happen because you're going to pivot before you get to that worst possible outcome and you're going to figure it out,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, man, you do all this short-term rental stuff, pick up all these co-hosting deals, and then along the way, you get into your first hotel deal, and that was pretty early on. Tell me about that, and how did that come to fruition?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So one of the gentlemen that I was co-hosting for, he actually found this deal, and he brought it to me, and he was like, hey, man, do you think your systems would work at scale on something like this? And I was like, well, let me go take a look. So we went and looked at it together, and I said, yeah, I think this could totally work. And this is back in 2020, early 2020. I didn't know anybody that was doing hotels, but I'm like, yeah, it's a big STR. There's just multiple rooms in one building. I'm like, this can definitely work. So yeah, we took that deal down. It did very, very well. It was a little 13-unit boutique right on the ocean, mint location. Got some seller financing on it. It seemed everything would align. And I learned a lot along the way, man, because there was no book, there was no mastermind, there was no course or anything on this. And it's been one of my favorite projects even still. It's just an amazing location. We've done extremely well financially on it, was able to, refinance it and do very, very well. And we still hold that. And we're going to be adding to more units to that next year. But that was my first forte. And again, if that deal had popped up a year before that, I probably wouldn't have done it because I didn't have that internal belief that we were talking about later. I had to just really trust my gut that I could figure this thing out and make it work. Because obviously there was a lot of money on the line. So it was like, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out.
I've seen photos of that deal, man. It's gorgeous property. How many units is it? And I know it's right on the water. What market is that?
Yeah. So it's just like 45 minutes north of Boston, little small like coastal town. But the deals that I really like, and I know you've done deals like this too, is like the location is mint. The property needs a lot of love. And the community itself is great, but there's just a lot of 1970s, 1980s looking hotels and motels there that if you went in there and put some love into a place, you could be the best property there very, very quickly. And that's what we did. We just executed on that plan, implemented all of our technology, got us on all the OTA platforms, implemented a lot of our direct booking strategies, reduced a lot of our expenses with a lot of technology, just like really bumped that NOI that we'll be talking about at the workshop tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, I was just like, okay, there's some real opportunity. Like once we got through that first year and started to figure a lot of things out, it's like this is way bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
And there's so much opportunity.
You guys had a big refi with that one. A lot of value created.
Yeah, a lot of value.
Similar to the first one we did. And once I saw that, I was like, dude, I'm going all in on this.
Yeah.
You know, is that area a little bit more rural? Or would you say there's a lot of branded hotels in that area as well?
No, super rural. There's no branded hotels in that area.
So the first one we did was kind of a similar area. Not a lot of there's no branded hotels and only maybe a handful of boutique hotels in the area. But to your point, it's like, well, you go into those areas, there's a lot of pros. And one of them is you don't run the risk of oversaturation. There's not going to be a bunch of branded hotels and coming in and building. And so if you do a nice renovation, you do a good job with marketing, you can run the top property and command the highest ADRs and RevPAR in that market, which is kind of cool. Where on the flip side, you go into some of these big metros, you got a lot of competition. You know, you're a small fish in a big sea there.
The biggest thing that I always say about commercial real estate, it's an insider's game. It's an insider's game.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, like, if you're going to go buy an STR, like a single family home, you're going to go on the MLS and you're going to look around, and most likely you're going to find something that you can buy and it's going to work. Anything that you find in the commercial world that is on LoopNet has already been sent to 30 to 50 investors. Because what happens in commercial is somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about selling this place. Keep it on the down low for now. But do you have anybody, they're talking to their broker, do you have anybody in your buyer Rolodex that you think would be interested in this deal? So then they shop it out to some individual investors that the brokers worked with in the past. And if none of them want it, then they say, okay, well, we got to market this thing and get it out there a lot more. And so the first deal is always the hardest because you're the new fish in the pond. So you got to prove yourself. But once you start doing that, then the brokers are going to start sending you more and more deals once they know that you're an actual player, because there's a lot of tire kickers in the commercial space. Like, yeah, I'm ready to do a deal. I want this. I want that. Okay, cool. And they start to send you some deals, and then you can't close the deal. Then you lose all your reputation. So I say it's an insider's game, because if you want first dibs on all these deals, especially if you're in a big metro, you got to be a player and you got to have the right connections.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And that's why I think it's important, if you are new and you've never done a deal, well, it's important to get in these support groups, accountability groups, and leverage the experience, the track record of other folks in your group. Partner with folks that have done multiple deals, leverage their track record, maybe find a good property manager that manages a lot of assets, leverage their expertise. So there's ways around it.
Exactly.
If you don't have the experience. Same thing with the lending in the commercial space is different, right? You go get lending on a single family home that you're going to operate as an STR. That's a whole different type of lending. But in the commercial space, it's like, dude, it's relationship based, heavy on scheduled real estate owned, heavy on net worth, right?
And your experience, like your track record.
Experience, guarantee a note. They're going to want to see a net worth equal to or greater than the loan amount. But if you don't have it, partner with someone that does have it, and until you do have the net worth. But that's the beauty of commercial real estate. It's like, these are bigger deals. It's more of a team sport. And I think the bigger the deal, the bigger the team. And it's something that people don't do on their own. People don't go build these big commercial real estate portfolios on their own. It's a team sport, man.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was it's one of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow. Like, you have to get in that mindset. And the reason why the partnership that I've had with my partners has worked so well is because we each have complementary skill sets, but we all have expertise in different areas. Where I brought the operational expertise, one of them brings more of like the deal finding and the deal making and the lending piece, and the other one brings a lot of the construction piece. So if I was going to do a deal like we did on my own, I would have been way over my head. I wouldn't have had the net worth to qualify for the deal. But when you have the right partners in there, there's ways to do it and reduce everybody's risk. And there's enough meat on the pie that everybody still wins.
Yeah.
There's only so much meat that can go around on a single family home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I agree. Even a small slice of ownership in these larger deals where you're creating $4, $5, $6, $7 million of equity growth over a 2 to 3 year time horizon. I mean, even a small
Those
slice of that can change your life.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the beauty of like these bigger deals is, you don't have to bring the A to Z. You can just literally be good at one aspect and partner with other folks that, can bring the other aspects. So for example, if you're good at sourcing deals, networking with brokers, qualifying deals and finding good deals, literally you could just find good deals and partner with other folks that bring the capital, they bring the operations, and you just focus on finding good deals, and you get a slice of ownership in all these deals, you know?
Exactly.
And
We're always looking for deals, man.
yeah.
Both of us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a whole skill set in and of itself, and it takes time.
And so, or maybe you're just good at operations, and that's cool, you know? Go partner with folks that can find the deals and bring the money in. And so I think that's the beauty of commercial real estate. It's funny you mentioned in 2020 when you did your first hotel, you were like, dude, there's no education out there on boutique hotels. There's no books. There's no podcasts. Like, I find the same thing. And I'm like you look at short-term rentals or multifamily or self-storage, there's all this like educational stuff out there. But why do you think in the boutique hotel space there's nothing?
I just think it was such an untapped market, right? You shared that stat on IG about, was it 40 million baby boomers are retiring, and it's estimated that 25% of the like mom and pop motels are owned by baby boomers.
Yeah.
Like, it was just an old thing. And the STR industry was like conditioning us that hotels were the enemy, and, you know, we're going to take down the hotels. That's never going to happen. There's always going to be a market for both. And I just think it was just one of those like untapped markets. And I'm telling you, in the next 2 years, it's going to be just as popular as short-term rentals. It just will. So like, that's why I'm excited about it, because we're quote unquote the early adopters in the game here, just like doing deals now before it comes more mainstream. But you and I both know people that are coming here this week that we've met in the past that are doing bigger and bigger deals.
Yeah. And when we go to these conferences that are like, you know, heavy on short-term rentals, I feel like whenever there is a boutique hotel panel, it's always the most popular segment of the entire conference. I think it really is the next natural progression for a lot of these short-term rental investors. And it makes sense. I mean, if you're going in these markets that are, you know, tightening on short-term rental regulations, well, we know that's going to bring higher ADRs and higher occupancy over to the hotels. So you can pick up these deals at a discount, and then find a way to add a lot of value. And that's the other thing. I mean, we're going to talk about tomorrow is like, you know, commercial real estate and how it's valued versus the residential. I mean, once you learn that formula and then realize like, man, there's all these mom and pop sellers out there that are selling these tired assets at a discount. There's just a lot of opportunity.
Dude, I'm a numbers guy. Right? I was a CPA. So like once I started seeing those, like just playing with those numbers, I was like, this is life-changing.
Yeah.
Like one deal can be life-changing.
Yeah.
You know, just the numbers just multiply. The better job you do at improving that asset from a income standpoint, you just get an exponential return on that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, I know it was interesting because Cody Sanchez did a post, and she was like, one of the businesses I would never buy is a hotel.
I saw that.
And I was like, oh, I want to do a reaction video of that one. But the multiples that you can get on these hotels is insane if you know what you're doing, because it is a people business and you got to know what you're doing to get in here. But man, the opportunity is ridiculous right now.
Yeah. That's funny. I saw that too. And actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to actually do a reaction video. I'm going to do one this week, actually. That's pretty good. I need to get Cody on the pod. I met her twice now, once in San Diego airport and then once in my neighborhood where I live. She was eating dinner with her husband in Lit, Italy. And the second time I invited her on the pod and she's like, yeah, I'm down. Shoot us an email. And the team reached out and she's like, hey, I'm busy right now, but we'll do it another time. So I need to get her on. She lives part-time in San Diego. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. But yeah, I agree. I think some people look at the hotel stuff and they realize, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. You know, if you have food and beverage, that's a whole nother component. But, you know, you start taking down these smaller deals, you know, and if you're gonna do self-check-in, self-checkout model, you don't have food and beverage. It's really not that complicated. It's really not that much more than operating, you know, 10 or 12 short-term rentals.
Yeah, there's just nuances, right? And we're going to cover all of those tomorrow. But I'll just, like, one big nugget that I did not anticipate when we got into this is just the volume of phone calls that you get when you operate a hotel versus an STR. You know, we were getting anywhere from 500 to 1,000 inbound phone calls per month per hotel. It's a lot of phone calls, right? So we just staffed up with our virtual assistants, got them trained up so they could answer the phone. We have reverse phone lookup so they know which hotel is getting the call, so they know how to answer the phone. That was one thing that I was like, whoa, this is a lot of phone calls. Because you'll get a phone call here and there with STRs, but not like that. And it's just because people are just trained to call hotels. It's just what they've always done. Yeah.
In terms of the operations, like what is the biggest difference with the hotels? You mentioned the calls. What's another big difference in your estimation?
Calls, what I've experienced is that it was, at first I was going to use my third-party cleaners. I had a great third-party cleaning company, and they did it for about 2 years. And then we added the second one. My partners bought a second one and they asked if I would manage that one. I said, sure. So we took that one on and they just got way too overwhelmed. It just started compounding very quickly. The quality went down. They couldn't keep up with it. So we pivoted and basically built in-house cleaning teams for both hotels, right? Which then leads to its other thing of, okay, well now you need some type of middle management to just manage the cleaners instead of using a third party. That was the other big thing that was just a difference where you take it for granted. If you get a good cleaner or good cleaning company, you're not playing like the scheduling game. You take it in-house, you're playing the scheduling game. So you got to find, I'm not managing that. I want to find somebody that can manage the schedules for different people. And the other thing too with that first deal was I planned to run it remote, but what I found was it's like an old inn that was just chopped up. And it was difficult for a lot of the guests to find where their room was. We got signage everywhere. We do walkthrough videos, all this stuff. But people were still finding a hard time getting their rooms. And this is an expensive place to go to. And so the reviews started to slip a little bit. So we ended up pivoting and just hiring a supervisor for that property. And they handle all the back of the house stuff. It's still self-check-in. Like they still go to their rooms. You don't got to go to a front desk or whatever. But this person's primary role was to just maintain the back of the house, all the supplies, manage the cleaners, and then just make sure guests have a great experience. And this
is the 57 unit?
No, this is just a 13 unit.
Okay, got it.
But there's enough revenue that property produces that it can support a staff. And that's the other thing is if you're going to do it, if you're going to get into the hotels, I wouldn't go too small because you're going to be buying yourself a job if you run into that situation. Like if you didn't have the revenue to hire those people, I'd be an innkeeper right now, which I have no desire to be. Right? I want to own business. I want to own real estate. So don't go take down a deal that is going to end up creating a job for yourself because it's too small.
Yeah, we had housekeepers on payroll from the first one and all the other ones after, but I totally see what you're saying. Like without the economies of scale, it's hard to justify, 2 full-time cleaners and then like a floater, and then if you're gonna have a supervisor that's gonna go in and make sure everything's being managed correctly, it's tough if you don't have the economies of scale. So I think that's why ideally 20 plus starts to really, really make sense, or you have a smaller one that brings in the big revenue.
Exactly. It's more like the ADR. Like, as a rule of thumb, what I say is like, if a property can't bring in around $1 million, gross top line, maybe even 800, 750, you're just not going to generate enough revenue to support a staff under you. You know what I mean? If you can run it completely remote and everything is smooth, okay, fine. You squeeze out some more margin, but you start adding in payroll, it's going to eat into your NOI pretty quickly. Yeah. So
I agree with that. Because, at the same token, you pick up some of these deals in the Midwest, they might be 40 keys, but
yeah, they're going to do 600 grand.
But they might only do 600 grand. Doesn't make sense. And then you probably have a higher repair, maintenance, and all that sort of thing because there's more units. So that makes sense. And honestly, like I like to go into areas to where you can command higher ADRs because those are the types of folks that are willing to pay top dollar for a nice experience.
Exactly.
And so tell me about this latest one that you took down, 57 units, I believe it is. Where's that one?
That one is in Salem. It's in Massachusetts. Amazing project.
Is that where they do the Salem witch trials?
Yes.
So it's good for Halloween season, huh?
Yeah, it's actually a super strong market. Yeah. Overall, but yeah, Halloween is insane. Like the months of September and October are ridiculous.
I got to go out there for that.
Oh yeah, you got to stay at the hotel too. It's legit.
I'm down. I've seen some photos, man. You guys did a great job with it. The exterior, holy cow! Yeah, you were showing me the other day the exterior of that property. I mean, just when you roll up,
it feels like a community now. It feels like a resort.
You guys did the barbecue pits, the fire pits rather. Just the whole vibe. It just looks really, really nice, aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, it was a great project. We finished phase 1, and then hopefully we can get started on phase 2. Just working on finishing up the final permitting for phase 2. So we launched 30 of the 57 rooms back in October. It's done very well. And again, as you're thinking through these deals, you're always trying to figure out how can I make this property stand out, right? I'm not building a Hilton or a Marriott or like a cookie cutter hotel. So how do I make this property stand out? There's other hotels in the market that have better locations that are like right downtown. We're literally like 0.8 miles from like the main strip downtown. So it's a little further out. It's walkable, not enjoyable this time of year, but it's close. But we have a huge lot. We have plenty of parking for everybody. And we had this massive outdoor space that nothing was being done with. So, we went all in to really create a really awesome outdoor space that could be used year round. And then we've got some pretty exciting plans to finish that off as part of phase 2 and add an outdoor bar and a bunch of other really cool things to just give guests additional amenities that nobody else is going to be able to offer. And then to take it a step further, we've done some pretty wild stuff in the Disney market with crazy themed rooms and all these things. So we took 10 out of those 30 rooms and did these insane immersive themed rooms that you just got to see to check it out. I mean, it came out unreal. Danny has seen it. My videographer, he's been through it. It's legit.
How much are you guys putting into like one of these hotel rooms that you're theming out like that? Just ballpark.
Honestly, it's going to vary.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of them, I hired my crew from Orlando. He used to work for Disney. He was one of their like Imagineers, and he built this sick custom pirate ship bed. So the room, it looks like you're walking into like a sunken pirate ship wreck. So we've got like grass hanging from the ceiling, and we did this wallpaper that then we painted over and did epoxy floor. So it looks like it's saying shipwrecked in this room. I want to say that room was probably around $30,000 to do that room.
Just the design and the furnishings alone. This is not the renovation.
This is not the renovation.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. No, about that. Maybe 35, including like the full.
So you guys are going all in on this thing, and is the guests up there? I imagine there's kids and families.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. And so we have some more like adult themed rooms that are a little more freaky. Like we got a crazy clown room.
Yeah.
We've got like a goth room. We've got a dungeon room. We've got some witch rooms.
Because I don't have kids, but maybe if I was dating like a freaky chick,
dude,
maybe she would be into that.
I wasn't even looking at it from that angle, but some of the comments I see on that room, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's done super well. It's getting a lot of really good attention. And then once we finish phase 2, we definitely want to do like big, like actual launch and like a lot more PR because it's just so unique, man. Like when I would love to be able to like film people's reactions going into those rooms because I've been on site as people go into some of those rooms for the first time and they're just like, holy shit, like
crazy.
This is crazy.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And that's the stuff that people are going to remember. You know what I mean? Like those are the moments that are like, wow, that was like so crazy and so different. I've never experienced anything like that before. And that's what gets word of mouth. And again, you can do all the fancy marketing and everything else, but if you provide a crazy cool experience for somebody, you're going to get way bigger bang for your buck just through word of mouth advertising than you are going to be with paid traffic.
I love that.
Your biggest partner in a real estate deal is always your lender. For me, I prefer using someone I know, like, and trust, whether you're looking for commercial loans, residential loans, bridge loans, DSCR loans, no debt to income ratio, no tax returns. My guy, Chris Groves, has got you. As seen on episode 77 and episode 142, Chris is a good friend of mine and is doing a special offer for podcast listeners, $2,500 off of your closing costs and or appraisal fees. Visit grovescapital.com/Rich Summers to book a free call. Again, it's grovescapital.com/Rich Summers to book a free call. Now back to the show.
So you recently switched from in-house management for the hotels to third party. What were some of the reasons you decided to do that?
It came down to what we were talking about before with like focus and pushing up too many rocks, right? So like I had a decision to make and just getting clear on what my goals were. And I want to be able to grow the portfolio faster. And one of the things that takes the most amount of time, especially on a deal like this, is building the team and getting the right people and then making sure all the systems are in place. And we have all that, but it takes time to do it. And I've stayed fairly local to where I live because I know that market really well. I know I can get people. I know we can get stuff done. I want to expand a lot further and do a lot more deals and focus more on capital raising and doing those types of things and deal finding. And so I made a call that I was just like, at first I reached out to this company because I've stayed at some of their properties and they're amazing. And they just work with really nice boutique hotels. And I thought they were just in New England. And I was just going to have a conversation with the owner and just talk shop and, exchange some ideas and whatever. And then he was like, so I was like, so what do you guys charge anyway? And he told me, and I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, well, I wouldn't even do it for that. And then it just got me thinking a little bit more. And I'm like, well, why does it make sense to just do this? So like that was like the start of the conversation. I talked to them for a couple months and then I was just like, you know what? These guys have that economies of scale. They have a full revenue management team. They have a full accounting team. They have a full like team. They have 50 something properties all over the country. And then that was the kicker where I'm like, dude, if I want to expand to different markets that they already have people in, they're already going to know that market. They're going to have those teams. They're going to be able to help me get a second set of eyes on the underwriting and the market analysis and everything else. I'm like, this is a no-brainer. So like, yeah, I'll take a little step back in income for now on the management side, but it's going to tee me up for a lot bigger and further growth and be able to go wider. And I talked to my partners about it, and they're like, yeah, like we've seen them around, like they do a good job. We met them, and we were just like, you know, if you're cool with it, like we're good with it.
Yeah.
So
I interviewed the apartment rock star Robert Martinez out in Houston. He just recently got foreclosed on a $51 million multifamily note that he bought on floating debt. He's about 4,500 units, but and I asked him, I said, what was the reason this thing got foreclosed on? Where did you go wrong? And he said he had in-house property management all these years, and he had just went to third party when he bought this deal. And he said it was like the biggest mistake he made, because they just ran this property basically down to the ground, and he had to take it back in. But this is multifamily, right? And so the hotel stuff, you know, obviously we know there's a lot more moving parts. But to your point, like, he made a lot of good points, like economies of scale. These guys have their own in-house revenue management system or team. They got their own in-house accounting team. And so I think in the boutique hotel space, I mean, if you can find someone that can do all those things to where you can focus on that one thing, I think that's massive.
yeah, and it's not like I would get to be totally passive. Like
You're still asset
I'm
managing.
still asset managing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're managing the manager, right? So I'm still involved a lot with like the revenue management. Again, like how do you price these crazy themed rooms? I'm like, no. It needs to look like this and like this. And it's been great working with them because they're open to it. And I've explained like how we've run things in the past and like how can you merge this with, you know, 24/7 VA coverage, and how do you reduce overhead, and how do you implement this technology? And so it's been more of a partnership with them, which I like, and they were open to those ideas and they've implemented those ideas. Because again, it was not an easy decision. Like these things were my babies the last few years. You know what I mean? I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into these things. And obviously, like that story, like that's your biggest fear. You know what I mean? You got a lot tied into this stuff.
With investor, I think about that, right?
100%.
I think about, you know, with our investor capital and all that, I'm like, my biggest concern would be exactly that, just giving up the control. Because I know with us managing, I'm like, well, you know, if something does go wrong, we got full control. We can make a pivot quickly. So I'm curious, like, how has that been with you so far?
It's been good, man. And again, like they've taken my feedback and actually like, we just have an open dialogue, which is what I was really looking for. It wasn't to just like, hey, take this and run with it. I wanted to still be able to have input. Obviously, I want you guys to run point on everything, but if I see things, like I want them addressed, and I want to be able to have open dialogue about, listen, I've tried this in the past, you know, you guys are trying this now, like this isn't working or whatever. And it's been a lot more collaborative, and you know, I've got the CEO's cell phone number, I've got the owner's number, like obviously the whole team. And it's just been really good to work with them. And it was interesting because when I was talking to him, he was like, you know, the majority of properties that we take on, they're very similar to you, where they're at an inflection point where they've got 2 to 5 deals, and they're at that point where, okay, we want to keep growing. Are we going to go all in on building out a full management infrastructure, or are we going to find the right partner so that we can keep growing the portfolio and let them worry about it and just manage the manager? You know, so there's always those two schools of thought. And I've racked my brain around this for like 6 months because I was like, am I making the right decision? Am I not making the right decision? Like I got to make a decision. But at the end of the day, when I weighed out the pros and cons and just the gauging the level of conversations and the feedback that I was getting from them, I was like, okay, I feel comfortable with this. And there's some different clauses and different metrics that they have to hit. Otherwise we get out of the management contracts and all these things. But yeah, so far, I mean, they've done a great job. And, you know, we get our projections. I get a daily report that you send it weekly. I'm like, can I get this daily? They're like, no problem. So like, I get a daily report of all of our pacing for, you know, anytime we get new bookings, all these different things, what's our ADR, all this stuff. So yeah, it's been really good, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I like that. And to your point, I mean, that is the two schools of thoughts for all these real estate investors that are trying to scale their portfolios, is like, you know, if you have the in-house management arm, yes, you get more control, but two, I mean, that's a lot of headaches. Property management is not easy. You know, it's it's a thankless thing. And as you buy more properties and bring more properties on that you manage, well, you got to hire more, you got to create more systems, you got to bring on more team members. And so you can only grow and buy as much as your property management company can handle all that. And so, it's something I think about a lot. And I see other investors go the other route where they're like just what you mentioned. They're like, hey, let's just partner with a really good management arm and let's just scale and we'll let them handle all the back end stuff. So
I think the advantage though is because I've been running them for 3 years, I know what to look for.
That's so good.
It's hard to manage something that you don't fully understand or you haven't been in the trenches.
That's so good. I didn't think about that.
So like when I'm looking at certain things, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Where if I just hired somebody out the gate, it's harder to identify those things.
Yeah. Do these guys manage like all over the states and bigger, larger branded properties too, or just the small stuff?
Just smaller stuff. When I say smaller, I mean anything from like ours is probably one of the smallest that they'll end up taking, that 13, which will transition probably the next couple months. But I didn't realize how much bigger they were because I see them all over New England. I just thought it was a New England company, but they're all over the place now. I don't know what their average deal size is, but if I had to guess, probably 30 to 50 keys, something like that. Like mid-size, boutique, high-end, high ADR type of cool spots.
Did you guys move all your single family stuff to third party as well?
No.
Okay.
That's
just the boutique hotel
that
stuff.
Stuff's cake, man. Yeah. That's the easy stuff.
Yeah. Dude, I want to switch gears here a little bit because, I think we both came from like a W-2 background. And now, being real estate investors and entrepreneurs, there's really two major like learning curves. It's like one, the strategy behind investing in real estate and buying these deals. It's all strategy. But then, the business architecture side of like actually growing and scaling a business, marketing, getting leads, converting the leads, and all the back end, growing a team and all leadership and all that stuff. There's a lot of things. Which of those two sides, really are you more like, do you enjoy learning more? The strategy of investing in real estate or more like learning business architecture?
I think for me, like I find business is like more exciting for me. Like real estate, I love real estate because it's black and white. Like the numbers pencil or they don't pencil. And obviously, there's a lot of creativity involved and ways to evolve it. But the reason I liked it from the beginning was, and why I never dabbled too much in the stock market was because I just felt like there were too many factors outside of my control. Like, I don't know, there's just so many swings that are out of my control. Where in real estate, like, we've been in this a while. Like, we've ridden through COVID. We've been through ups and downs, a whole bunch of different things. There's always things that are in my control that I can do to control my income. Always. And I like that. I'm a control freak. So, which is interesting after our last conversation, right? Which is why it was so hard. But, but like that's part of it. But I love the business side of it because as I started to grow the portfolio and grow the team that would manage the portfolio and been helping other people, do that for years as well. A lot of the feedback I got from the members of the mastermind was like, hey, these principles and the things that I've learned here, I've applied to my fitness studio as well. And I've applied it to this and to this. And it's just those business principles, they work in real estate, they work in other businesses, they work in your personal life. Like they're just universal. So for me, that's why it's more exciting to focus on that. The two things that I spend most of my time on is leadership and mindset, like those two things. And then probably it's like the 80-20 rule, like 20% on like the technical skills or improving certain areas related to the real estate. And the rest is just leadership and mindset. Because at the end of the day, the only way that you continue to scale, and I learned this a lot this past year because I really started hiring A players for different businesses that we have. And my life just got so much easier. It was just like, wow, it's amazing. You pay a lot more for those people, but
you get a lot more output.
But you get so much more output.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one figuring out how to solve the challenges. I'm just paying smart people that are smarter than me in certain areas to figure out how to solve those problems. And it's like, wow, what a weight lifted off my shoulders. I don't know why it took me so long to just start hiring like higher level talent for certain, higher level positions.
That's so good. I mean, that was a realization for me as well. I mean, you could pay someone 50% more than the others in the marketplace, but that person you're paying 50% more could give you 300% more output.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do the math.
Exactly. So you mentioned leadership. what are like one or two, what separates, I guess my question is, what separates a really good leader from someone who's just mediocre?
I would say so many different areas, but I think if you ask my team, one of the reasons why they respect me as a leader is because they know that I truly care about them. Like, I know about them personally, professionally. I know what their goals are, and I do everything in my power to ensure that as our business goals are met, their personal goals are met in tandem with that. So, like, if the business is winning, they're winning. I'll give you an example. One of my first VAs that I hired, he ended up growing into an operations manager role, and he had a goal of purchasing a rental property, a short-term rental. And so I'm like, well, there's only so much I could pay him for the role that he was in. So I'm like, how else could we generate extra income for him? And one of the things that he was doing for me was recruiting more VAs for our team. And I was like, well, I know that mastermind students ask me for this all the time. What if I helped you start this business to recruit VAs for the students? And dude, he took that and ran with it to the point that he got so big that he had to step down from the operations manager role, and we had to backfill it. But now, he bought his family a home, he bought a rental property, and his life will never be the same. And that dude would be loyal to me to the ends of the earth because I gave a shit and tried to find a way to align his goals, which would also benefit the company, obviously. So caring about your people is number one. And then
it's hard to teach that though, right?
You either have
being
that
a
or
good
you
human
don't,
being,
man.
it's kind of hard to teach that.
Yeah.
Because if you're not a good human being at a level to where you don't experience any success, they say when you get a little bit of money, a little bit of success, it's going to amplify who you truly are. But they say at the same token, if you are a good human being and you have a good heart at a place, of no success, and then you get a little success, it amplifies that, and you're going to be even more of a bigger heart, if that makes sense. They say that.
And people can poke holes in that too. And that's just from my experience. But, I love reading books and studying super successful people. I read Elon's new book a few months ago. Does he genuinely care about people around him? I don't know. It didn't feel that way in the book. Steve Jobs, a lot of these guys that have done amazing things in the world, there's multiple ways to do it. But I found for me, one of the things I value most is just integrity and loyalty. And so how do you build those things? Well, you give it back to people and you find ways to make it work. And so that's just one thing, is just care about your people, and you won't have to micromanage them because they'll want to make you proud. They'll want to get good results because they genuinely care about the company and they care about you, and they don't want to let you down. Ironically, I remember the first WealthCon we did 3 years ago. The last piece of the STR thing that I was hanging on to for dear life was the owner reports that I'd send out at the end of the month. Everything else I pretty much, outsourced to the team or delegated. And I remember it was the first week of June, and I said to Mark, I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to, he sent me a message. He said, hey, the owner reports are ready for your review. And I said, hey, Mark, I'm at the conference. I'm not going to be able to review them. I'm trusting you that you can review them and make sure they're correct before you send them out. And the way that I worded it, it empowered him, but I guarantee you he quadruple checked those damn statements before they went out. You know what I mean? So there's that level of accountability and trust that you get when people are loyal to you, instead of somebody that's just pushing a button of, okay, well, he told me to send them, so I'm just going to send them. The second thing would be the accountability piece of it, and doing it from a place of, and I struggled with this because I don't like confrontation, but when I looked at it from a different lens, it was like, I'm doing this person a disservice if I don't hold them accountable and help them get over these flaws that they have, or these screw ups that they keep making. I'm doing them a disservice because one, it's going to drive me freaking nuts and I'm going to lose my shit on them every once in a while. And two, they're not going to grow. And so be okay holding your people accountable, but do it from a place of like, dude, I see so much more in you, and I just want to help you live into that potential. And again, it comes from a place of caring and empathy, not like beating the crap out of your team.
That's so good, man. I feel like, I can resonate with everything you said, but really, like, I think one of the things that, allows us to level up as entrepreneurs and continue to move the ball down the field with our businesses, not just for us, but for the entire team, is really being able to delegate out certain things and really like reallocate that time so you can focus on your highest and best use. And your highest and best use might evolve over time, as you know. And so, like you, I don't love micromanaging and leadership and all that sort of stuff. I like, I'm a visionary at heart, right? And I think my highest and best use right now is doing the content, doing the marketing, and that sort of thing. And so, recently we brought someone on to do sales to raise capital, because before I was doing all the calls with raising capital. And so I'm like, wow, now we bring on like an A player in sales. Now I can double down on the marketing and the content, the visionary, which is going to, bring us more leads and that sort of thing so we can ultimately grow better. So just like looking back and like looking through the progression of like, every single level and what you got to do to get to the next level, it's been kind of cool. But I guess my question for you is, when you look back to where you were 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and where you are now, what is your highest and best use now, and how has that kind of evolved?
It's literally exactly what you just said, right? And I was talking to my team about this the other day of how when we get back from Nashville, I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off once the baby comes, but I like to reevaluate, like I design my schedule intentionally, right? So I call it like my perfect week of how I like to structure my time. And my highest and best use, just like you said, is doing stuff like this and doing the content and building the brand. That's my highest and best use. And quite frankly, it's what I love to do. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And so now that I've gotten those A players in place and I'm offloading a lot of the other management stuff that was taking up some of my time, it wasn't that it took a ton of my time, but it took a lot of my like mental bandwidth to make sure that everything was good all the time. Like I wasn't running the plays and the X's and O's. It was more just like making sure that everything was smooth, making sure all the numbers were right, making sure all this was good. And that it just like, it wasn't my highest and best use. Right? Doing this stuff is my highest and best use. And then empowering the team every single week and helping them to continue level up, that's my best use. Like if I get the right players on the bus, everything else is going to get easier and I'm going to get to focus on what I like to do.
Right people, right seats.
Dude, it sounds so cliche and you probably have heard this a million times, but until you've actually experienced it, I'm telling you, it is a game changer.
What do you guys use to operate the company? So we use EOS. What do you guys use?
Yeah, so I hired an EOS coach, and then I morphed it a little bit because EOS is great. It probably would work better straight out of the box now that we have a lot more scale and our org chart's a lot bigger. But like when we implemented EOS, I think we had like 3 or 4 employees, and EOS is great for large organizations. So I morphed that a little bit with, you know who Alex Sharfin is? You'd like him. His podcast is called the Momentum Podcast.
Okay.
Really good dude. Kind of through that like Russell Brunson network. I think I met him.
Nice.
And I did his mastermind for a year and I kind of bridged the two. And he works with a lot more like small businesses that are like leaner. So we took a blended approach of like EOS and Sharfin system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love EOS because it's, for me being a visionary, I'm like, idea, let's figure out a way to do it. And then, implementing it and all these other things that need to be done is a lot of variables, but it's just a great way for us to, track what's going on.
You need a system.
Yeah.
You have to have a system for getting what's in your head out to the team and then letting the team work through how can we bring that to fruition. That there has to be a system and a cadence to communicate that effectively.
Yeah. And you need a really good integrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you have all these ideas. I'm curious, like moving forward, as you look into the rest of 2024 and maybe next year, what excites you the most? Because you built, all this short-term rental stuff, and then you're doing the boutique hotels, and you've built this 2 awesome masterminds. You got a really huge community. I'm in one of your masterminds, and it's changed my life. So looking forward, and you got the kids, you're married, you got the family. So like, what excites you moving forward?
The thing that excites me most is having our baby girl in a month. I'm really excited about that. I get to be a girl dad. Really, really excited about that. Cause again, this whole thing started for me because of family, right? And I never want to lose sight of that. And I go through these seasons where there's like, this past year was a grind season, like getting this, phase 1 over the line and doing all these different things and getting ready for this event. It was a grind season, right? And so I'm looking forward to taking some time and being more present at home and doing all those things. And then just continuing to grow the boardroom, which I'm really excited about. That's been a blast.
How many members you got now in the boardroom?
Like 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's much more selective. You have to meet certain criteria. 95% of them are doing hotels or they have a large portfolio of STRs. But it's just a lot of fun. And we get together 3 times a year and just have like these kind of like a mini Miami type of thing that we did.
I like that.
And it's just a lot of fun, man. And what I'm excited about, honestly, for me is the way that I'm structuring my new schedule. Like I love learning stuff and like getting that visionary out. So, my plan is Mondays, I stack all my meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays right now. And, going forward on Mondays, that's going to be like a learning day for me. So I can just pick a topic and just go deep, like just binge YouTube videos about it, read books about it, whatever, just like process all of it. And then, pass that on to the team, figure out how we can execute it on in the business. And then between Wednesday and Friday, record different content on it, right? Like I love learning. And now that I've got the right people on the team, you can just move a lot faster and you can test things a lot faster.
So you allocate one day a week to where you're just going to educate yourself on one new thing that you could implement to the business or bring to the team to just get another edge.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So
give me an example. Like what are some of the recent ones you learned?
So this is what I'm going to do after this, because the last couple months were crazy getting ready for this event. But, one of the ones I'm going to deep on is with Pace, man, and just really learning a lot of the subject to stuff and a lot of more, like I've done creative finance stuff. That's how we got our first hotel, but I want to do a subject to deal. Right. And so I'll spend a day just like binging his stuff, looking forward to connecting with him this week, and then figuring out like, how can I execute on that? Maybe I'll pick up like a nice vacation rental somewhere, or maybe I'll use it to take down a hotel, because there's a lot of debt that's going to be coming due at pretty high interest rates. There's going to be some interesting opportunities. So yeah, that's just like one simple example. And it'll flip back and forth between real estate, business, mindset. Those are like, my big 3. So
yeah, that's cool, man. I've never actually heard someone say that they allocate a full day each week to just learn something new to implement to their business.
Well, I look at guys like Warren Buffett, dude.
Yeah.
He reads like 6 hours a day. You know what I mean? And he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. So I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm running around being busy instead of like thinking.
Yeah.
Like,
what does the rest of your week look like? You said 2 days meetings, 1 day learning something new. And then what does the rest of it look like?
There'll be a day just like content, just like recording a bunch of content. And then the other day is more of a flex day. And then in the summer.
So flex day could be whatever you feel like doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, all right, maybe I want to dive a little bit deeper. Maybe I will take a couple meetings. Maybe I'll do somebody else's podcast.
Typically Fridays.
Typically Wednesdays. And then Fridays in the summer. Fridays is my golf day too. So I'll usually golf like Friday and then some day on the weekend.
Okay.
So.
I like that, man. I like that.
You can get, if you're intentional with your time and you stack your schedule the right way, you can get way more done than you think if you're actually focused and intentional with your time.
I've heard this before. And so when you say this, what's the optimal stacking of time to get the optimal production in your estimation?
I don't know. So
that works for you.
I think everybody's going to be different,
yeah,
right? So like for me, I need hard deadlines for myself. So whether they're real or I got to artificially create them. And so an example, I think you and I put together like 75 slides for that thing, right?
Yeah.
For our workshop tomorrow. We cranked those out pretty quickly in like, I don't know, a day, like less than a day, right? Like basically divvied it up. It was like, okay, you guys cranked till like 2 a.m. that night. And then I took the other half and we got it done in like a couple days, like max, right? Where if you told somebody, hey, I need you to put together a 75 slide deck to present in front of like this conference, they'd be like, well, I'm going to need a few weeks, right? Like we did it in like a day or 2, right? It's just like you compress time. When you give yourself a deadline, it forces your brain to focus and just be like, okay, what are the key points that I want to hit? Boom, 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 and keep it moving. And I remember watching, I don't remember if it was his podcast or whatever, but Hormozy said something that was so interesting. He said, the reason why I'm this far ahead, of most people is because I make big decisions and execute on those way faster. Like most people would wait 2 weeks to make that decision and execute on it. He's like, I'll make one of those a day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's just the speed of execution and what you think you can achieve, right? Like I look at somebody like him or like Pace, dude. Like Pace is everywhere. Dude is everywhere. Like, oh, you think you're busy? Okay, well, there's always somebody. And then you look at like a Grant, you know what I mean? Like there's always somebody, they have the same 24 hours.
Mhm.
Their perception of time is just different.
Yeah.
It's just different.
And I also think, like, to your point, with the decision making, is there's hundreds of decisions to make. And the team structure and maybe your partnership structure determines how quickly you can make those decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did have 2 partners that I was buying real estate with. And one of the reasons I had to remove myself from that partnership is because every decision that came to the table, we would have to hop onto these 3-4 hour grueling meetings to make one decision.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like, I'm not going to grow if we're taking 4 hours to make a decision. And so now, like with the team, like we make a decision and we just go. It takes 2 seconds and we're on to the next one.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but compounded over time,
Dude, it has a
all those
massive
decisions,
compounding effect.
it turns into a lot of growth over time and can make a huge, huge difference. And so, yeah, I think who you're working with within the team, or if you have partners, is huge. I mean, if you're working with people that are always going to push back or they're always going to take their time making a decision and you like to move quickly, it's just not going to work.
It's going to drive you nuts.
Yeah, it does. It does. Because at the end of the day, I think 99% of these decisions don't have a ton of weight. It's just the fact that you make a decision and go is what's more important, and from what I've learned.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So I don't know, man. It's interesting. Like as we grow, you know, just how our perspectives can really change.
Yeah.
You know. Well, dude, I appreciate you taking the time to come on, man. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to this conference. It's gonna be ripping. We got our 4-hour boutique hotel workshop tomorrow, and then opening ceremonies tomorrow night. That's always a good time.
Oh yeah.
And then the rest of the conference, man. I'm excited for it.
It's going to be sick. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, as always, man. He's Mike Sjogren. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.